They told him not to drive past the ridge after midnight. Locals said that once the mist rolls in, the road is no longer his. It belongs to something else. Aaron did not believe in that kind of talk. He was 23, restless, and proud of the fact that he was unshakable. He grew up in Knoxville but spent weekends driving into the Appalachian back roads, looking for forgotten spots to photograph. The mountains had always fascinated him. The silence, the stretch of fog between the trees, the way the earth seemed older than anything man could measure. That October night he left late, too late. The forecast called for heavy fog, and the temperature had dropped faster than expected. The air felt wet, the kind that sticks to your skin. His phone had no signal, but he liked that. The isolation made the photographs feel more authentic. He parked his truck off an old logging path and started walking toward a ridge he had marked earlier on his GPS. The trees loomed like black teeth, their branches weaving into a ceiling that blocked out the moonlight. The only sound was the crunch of leaves under his boots and the slow, steady drip of water from somewhere above. He found a clearing with an old wooden structure, maybe a hunting cabin, though it looked more like something built long before anyone living could remember. He raised his camera and took a few shots. The flash briefly lit the woods, and in that moment, he saw something standing at the edge of the mist. It was tall, hunched, pale. Its limbs looked wrong, too long for a human, and it did not move when the flash hit it. It just stared. Aaron froze for a second. He thought it might be a tree or an illusion from the fog, but then it moved, just a twitch, like the tilt of a head. Acknowledging him, his breath hitched. He lowered the camera, took a step back, and felt his heel hit a root. The thing didn't advance. It just stood there, watching. Aaron turned and ran toward his truck, heart hammering, breath cutting through the cold air like shards. He didn't look back, not until he reached the driver's seat and slammed the door shut. He fumbled with the keys, turned the ignition, and the headlights flared. That was when he saw them. Not one figure, but three, standing in the fog just beyond the light beam, barefoot, dirty, eyes glinting with an animal hunger that did not belong in anything human. One crouched low, sniffing the air. Another tilted its head to the side, like trying to remember what language felt like. Aaron's hands shook as he jammed the gear shift into reverse. The figures twitched like startled deer, but they did not run. They watched as he backed up, their heads moving together in perfect rhythm. Then one took a step forward, smooth, low, almost crawling. He hit the gas, mud spun under the tires. The truck fishtailed, then caught grip and shot down the old road. The fog seemed to close in around him. He drove 10 miles before he saw light again. The small gas station by the county line. His hands were trembling so hard he could barely shut the engine off. He got out, stumbling toward the clock inside. The man behind the counter looked up, chewing tobacco, unimpressed. "Son, you look like you seen a ghost." Aaron's voice broke. Out there in the fog, there were people, or something like people, watching me. The clerk stared at him for a moment before spitting into a can. "Shouldn't be out there after midnight. The mist don't hide the animals." "It hides them," Aaron frowned. "Them." The clerk nodded slowly. "They've been up there long before us. Some say there used to be folks once, but they went too deep into the mountains, forgot what being human was. Now they live in the mist, feed on what wanders too far." Aaron drove home that night with his headlights on full, never slowing until he saw city lights again. 2 weeks later he returned with a friend, just to prove it was all in his head. They found the old cabin easily, but something was off. The air felt different, colder. The ground was littered with small bones. Not animal bones, human finger bones, arranged in a circle. Aaron's friend wanted to leave, but Aaron insisted on taking one more picture. He lifted his camera, adjusted the focus, and pressed the shutter. When he looked at the preview screen, his stomach dropped. There was something in the frame, behind his friend, half in shadow. A face not human and smiling, That was the last picture Aaron ever took in the Appalachians. The scream came from the trees, high, human, and wrong. Clara froze where she stood, flashlight shaking in her hand. Her brother Mason turned, eyes wide, scanning the woods. The sound came again, distant but desperate, like someone was being torn apart. They had only planned to camp for one night. It was supposed to be an October escape, a quiet weekend away from the chaos of their jobs in Asheville. The Appalachian range had always been their comfort place growing up. Their parents used to take them hiking every fall, and the forest used to feel alive in a good way, safe, nostalgic. But now, as the mist crept through the trees like slow-moving smoke, Clara felt something shift. They had arrived earlier that afternoon, hiking 2 miles off a forgotten service road. Mason had insisted on setting camp near an old stream bed. "The view will be perfect in the morning," he'd said. The sun had gone down early behind the mountains, and by the time they had a fire going, the woods were already whispering. Around midnight, Clara heard the first sound, a low grunt, almost like someone clearing their throat just outside the firelight. She thought it might be a deer, until Mason's face went pale. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. The grunt came again, then a crack of branches. Then something moved just beyond the orange flicker of the flames. Slow, deliberate steps. Mason grabbed the hatchet from his pack. Holding it like he knew what to do with it, Clara pointed her flashlight toward the noise. Nothing, just trees and mist, then the scream. It was so close this time that her chest vibrated from it. It didn't sound like a person in pain. It sounded like something pretending to be human. "Pack up," Mason said. His voice was shaking, but he kept it steady enough to sound in control. They moved fast, dousing the fire, stuffing their sleeping bags and gear into their packs. The forest went silent again. No wind, no animals, just silence. Then came the soft sound of movement. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Circling them, Clara's heart raced. The flashlight beam caught glimpses of fog, swirling low to the ground. Mason grabbed her arm. "Don't stop, keep walking." They started moving toward the trail. Staying close, the trees closed in tighter, and the air got colder. The smell hit them, metallic like rust or blood. Then something brushed against Clara's sleeve. She spun, but nothing was there. That was when they saw the hand, a pale, dirt-covered hand reaching from behind a fallen log. Fingers curled, skin stretched too thin. Mason swung the flashlight toward it, and a shape rose slowly behind the log. It was human, or at least it used to be. Its eyes caught the light, reflecting yellow like an animal. Its jaw hung loose, and its clothes were torn rags of flannel and mud. It made a sound like a breath forced through water. Then another shape appeared behind it, smaller, hunched, crawling on all fours. Clara screamed and ran. Mason shouted after her, but she didn't stop. She could hear them following, fast but not running, moving in bursts like they were tracking. Her boots hit mud, then stone, then roots. The trail vanished. She was lost, Mason. She yelled, no response, just the forest breathing heavy around her. Then, from somewhere ahead, a whisper, "Clara." It was Mason's voice, soft, hoarse, calling her name. Relief flooded her chest, and she stumbled forward, tears streaming down her face. "Mason, I'm here," she called. The voice came again. Closer. "Clara, this way." She followed it, pushing through the brush, ignoring the branches clawing at her arms. Then she froze. There was someone standing in the fog. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing Mason's jacket. But as her flashlight hit the figure's face, her breath stopped. It was not Mason. Its skin hung loose, its mouth stretched too wide. The voice that came out next was Mason's again. Perfect, like a recording. "Clara, where are you going?" She stumbled backward, dropping the light. The figure twitched, then started moving toward her, first walking, then running on all fours. A blur of limbs and snarls. Clara screamed and turned. She ran until her lungs felt like they were tearing apart. The ground gave way beneath her feet, and suddenly she was falling, tumbling down a slope, hitting rocks, dirt, and finally landing hard against something solid. Darkness swallowed her when she opened her eyes. It was daylight, birds were singing. She was lying on the side of a shallow creek. Her flashlight was gone. Her backpack was torn open, but she was alive. She limped toward where she thought their camp had been. The fire pit was gone, scattered. Mason's pack was ripped open. But he was nowhere in sight. Only the mist remained, crawling low along the trees, curling around the trunks like fingers. When she finally reached a ranger station 3 miles down the valley, they called for search teams. They looked for Mason for 4 days. Dogs, drones, volunteers, nothing. No tracks, no blood. Nothing except an old boot found near the stream, half buried in the mud. When the sheriff questioned her, he said quietly, "You're not the first one to lose someone in those woods. You go deep enough, you'll find they don't live like us. They live in the mist." Clara never returned to the Appalachians again. But sometimes late at night she dreams of that voice calling her name from the fog just outside her window. The radio died the second the road ended. Trevor sat behind the wheel, staring at the road closed sign lying half buried in the mud. The mountains loomed ahead, swallowing the fading light. His GPS blinked red, no signal. His phone, same thing. He had taken a wrong turn somewhere outside Boone, North Carolina, trying to shortcut through a logging road that Google Maps swore existed. It didn't. Great, he muttered, glancing in the rearview mirror. The road behind him was nothing but mist and shadow. He checked the time, 6:47 p.m. He still had nearly 40 miles to drive before reaching the tiny cabin his friend had rented for the weekend. A weekend to unplug and unwind, they'd said. It was supposed to be fun. He killed the engine and stepped out, the crunch of gravel echoing too loud. The air was cold enough to sting his lungs. The forest pressed close on both sides, and the silence was unnatural. No birds, no bugs, just his own breathing. Then faintly, a whistle. It came from deeper in the trees, long and drawn out. At first, Trevor thought maybe it was wind catching through branches, but it came again, this time clearer. It sounded like a person. He called out, "Hey, you okay out there?" No answer, just the soft crack of a stick snapping underfoot somewhere ahead. He felt stupid standing there, calling into the woods, but something about that whistle gnawed at him. It wasn't random, it was rhythmic, it had tone, almost like someone mimicking. Trevor got back in the truck, locked the doors, and tried to start the engine. Nothing, dead. The battery light flickered once and went out. "Come on, don't do this to me," he tried again. Nothing but the sound of the key turning. Then came the whistle again, closer. It was followed by another sound, a low dragging noise, like something being pulled through the dirt. Trevor's breath hitched. He looked around, scanning the tree line, but the mist had thickened into a pale wall. The dragging got louder. Then he saw movement. At the edge of the fog, something crouched low, its outline twisted, almost human but not quite. Its limbs moved wrong, too long, too loose. Trevor's body went cold. The thing straightened slowly, as if realizing it was being watched. Then it whistled, the same exact sound he'd heard before. Perfectly mimicked. He fumbled for his phone again, praying for a signal, anything. The screen stayed blank. When he looked back up, the thing was gone. Okay, it's fine, he muttered, hands trembling. He reached into the glove compartment, pulling out the flashlight he kept for emergencies. He clicked it on and froze. Fingerprints, greasy. Smudged fingerprints streaked across the windshield. On the inside, Trevor jerked around, scanning the cab. Empty. He could feel his heart slamming against his ribs. He rolled down the window, gasping for air, when something brushed against his shoulder from behind the seat. He whipped around. Nothing there, but the smell that hit him made his stomach turn. Wet soil. Decay. He scrambled out of the truck, Stumbling into the fog, he couldn't think, couldn't breathe. All he knew was that he had to move. He grabbed his flashlight and started walking down the broken road, the beam slicing through the mist. The sound of his boots echoed on the dirt. Then from behind him, another set of footsteps. He turned. The fog behind him shifted. A figure stood there, half hidden. It was tall, hunched, and it was wearing something. Clothes? No, remnants of clothes, strips of fabric and fur. Who's there? Trevor yelled. The figure didn't answer. It just tilted its head as if studying him. Then another figure appeared beside it, smaller, crawling on hands and feet. Trevor backed up slowly, keeping the light on them. I don't want any trouble. They didn't move. Until he turned. Then they came. He ran. The forest swallowed him whole. Branches tore at his jacket as he stumbled through the undergrowth, trying to find anything. A house, a light, a road. The whistles followed him, 2 of them now, echoing back and forth through the trees, answering each other. His foot caught on a root and he fell hard. The flashlight flew from his hand and landed beam down in the mud. Leaving him in darkness, he could hear them moving now. Slow, deliberate steps on either side. Circling, he crawled forward, searching for the light. His fingers brushed metal, not the flashlight. Something else, a rusted lantern. He grabbed it and yanked, and realized it was sitting beside an old wooden crate. A symbol was carved into it, worn by rain and time, a circle with 3 lines cutting through it. Before he could process it, a hand clamped down on his ankle. The grip was ice-cold, strong, inhuman. He screamed and kicked, breaking free and bolted through the trees. He didn't stop until he burst through the fog and stumbled onto a gravel road. Ahead, headlights, a truck, a real one. He waved frantically as it slowed. The driver, a ranger by the look of the uniform, rolled down the window. You lost, son. Trevor couldn't speak. He just pointed back toward the woods. The ranger followed his gaze, then sighed. Yeah, he said quietly. You shouldn't be out here after dark. They start moving when the fog gets thick. Trevor's voice cracked. Who? The ranger didn't answer. He just looked at the tree line and muttered, whatever they are. They were here before us. They drove back in silence. Trevor never recovered his truck. When they went to tow it the next morning, it was gone. Only the tire tracks remained, and a series of barefoot prints leading into the woods. That night, as Trevor lay in his motel bed, he heard the faintest sound outside his window. A whistle, the same rhythm, the same tone. They say there are shadows in the mountains that move against the light, that they whisper your name before you even speak. And if you're unlucky enough to hear them echo your breath, it's already too late. That is what 42-year-old Harold Dean Miller used to tell his 2 boys when they were growing up near a narrow stream deep in the Appalachian woods. The creek that ran through their land was known as Miller's Creek, named after Harold's great-grandfather, who had settled there generations earlier. The family stayed close to that land for nearly 200 years, but in October of 2006, they learned that something else had been living there much longer. Harold had always been a grounded man, a hunter, a churchgoer, someone who never believed in mountain tales. But after his wife passed away, he started walking the trails alone at night, sometimes sitting by the water until dawn. His son, Eli, would often find him there whispering as though he was talking to someone. When asked, Harold would just smile weakly and say, "The creek listens better than most people." As October came, the fog over Miller's Creek thickened into something unnatural. Locals said it rolled in even on windless nights. You could not see 5 feet ahead. And sometimes if you stayed quiet enough, you could hear footsteps pacing slowly on the opposite bank. Footsteps that matched your rhythm perfectly. Step for step, one cold evening, Eli returned from work to find his father gone. His hunting rifle was missing, but so were his boots. The old man had never left the house without them before. Eli called out into the woods, but his voice vanished into the fog as if swallowed by it. He followed the trail toward the creek until he reached the water's edge. That's when he noticed it, impressions in the mud. Not quite human, not quite animal. They were too long, too narrow, like a person had walked barefoot, but with the toes fused together into a single, sharp shape. He called again. No answer. Then came a low hum, a vibration in the air so deep he could feel it in his chest, and through the mist, he saw the outline of his father standing on the opposite bank. "Dad," he whispered, but Harold didn't move. He just stood there, motionless, watching, his head tilted slightly to the side, his arms hanging too loose, too limp. Eli stepped closer. That's when his father's voice spoke. But the sound came from behind him. "Do you hear them too, boy?" Eli spun around. No one was there. When he turned back, the figure across the water was gone. He ran home and locked every door. All night he could hear something brushing against the windows, soft and rhythmic. At one point, the porch boards creaked, and something scraped gently against the wood, like fingernails testing the grain. The next morning, searchers found Harold's rifle floating in the creek. No footprints, no blood, nothing else. The sheriff called it an accident. Said maybe Harold fell in and was carried downstream, but Eli knew better. Miller's Creek barely reached his father's knees. Days turned into weeks. Then one October night, Eli heard tapping on the window beside his bed. Not random. 3 slow taps. Pause. 3 again. It sounded almost deliberate. Against his better judgment, he lifted the curtain, and standing just outside was his father. Or what was left of him. His skin was pale gray, eyes hollow like wet stones, mouth open as if whispering something silent. His hands rested on the glass, long, narrow fingers that ended in points instead of nails. He didn't blink, he didn't breathe, he just stared. Eli screamed and stumbled back. The thing tilted its head, that same eerie tilt he'd seen by the creek, and pressed one pointed finger against the window, dragging it slowly down the pane with a faint screech. By the time Eli grabbed his shotgun, the window was empty, but when he looked at the glass the next morning, there was a long streak across it, and carved at the bottom clear as day were the words. They listened. A few nights later, Eli disappeared too. His truck was still parked in the driveway. The door was wide open, radio playing static. Search teams found his footprints heading toward the creek, then merging into something else, something longer, something sharper. The Miller house has been abandoned ever since. People passing through say you can still hear tapping on the windows late at night, followed by that deep vibrating hum that shakes the air. The locals warn hikers not to follow the sound, because that's how it calls you in. They say the shadows behind Miller's Creek are not just the dead. They're the ones who listened too long. If you ever find yourself near a fog-covered creek in Appalachia, and the mist begins to whisper your name, do not answer, because once you do, something will whisper back. If you're brave enough to keep listening to stories like this, make sure you subscribe to Fear Begins, because these mountains are far from silent, and the next story may be closer to your home than you think. They say the forest floor in Black Hollow breathes, not with the wind, but with something alive beneath it. And if you ever feel the dirt move under your feet, you'd better run before it decides to surface. There's an old mining road that cuts through the back of Black Hollow, a narrow stretch of forgotten earth buried in moss and fog. In the 1950s, coal miners used it to haul equipment from the ridge. But after a series of collapses, the mines were sealed off and the road abandoned. Only hunters and the desperate used it after that. That's where Sam Grady worked. He was a logger, mid-40s, rough and quiet, with a reputation for keeping to himself. He'd lived his whole life in those mountains, said the trees spoke clearer than people did. One October, after weeks of heavy rain, Sam's crew was ordered to cut timber near the edge of the old mining road, close to where the earth had once given way. The first sign something wasn't right came that morning. The ground steamed, not like mist, but like breath rising from something warm beneath the soil. One of the younger men joked it was just heat from decaying leaves, but the smell, metallic and sweet, like blood on iron, turned everyone silent. By noon, the crew's chainsaws began to fail one by one. The engines sputtered, choked, then died as if starved of air. Sam knelt to check the filters when he noticed movement near the hollow. The soil shifted, just slightly, as though something deep below had rolled over, probably a sinkhole. He muttered, trying to steady his nerves. But the movement came again, this time closer, slower, deliberate. That's when he saw it. The earth split. A long crack opened between the tree roots, and from the black soil, a pale hand clawed its way out. Not human, not animal. The skin was too thin, stretched like wax paper, and the fingers bent backward before gripping the edge of the pit. Sam froze. Something began to crawl upward, slow, trembling, like it had forgotten how to move. Its head broke the surface, covered in mud, eyes sunken and blind. It had no lips, no nose, just slits where features should have been, and a mouth that gaped open wider than a person's should. The others screamed. One man ran for the truck. Sam couldn't. He was paralyzed, caught between fear and pity. The creature looked frail, almost human, like it had been buried alive. But then it made a sound, a breath, followed by another. Then a voice that wasn't quite a voice. "Help," it whispered, though the sound came from its throat, scraping dry earth. So dark, Sam backed away, heart pounding. The thing dragged itself fully out now, shoulders, ribs, a spine that moved like a centipede beneath its flesh. It was covered in a thick tar-like substance that stank of decay. And yet beneath that rot, Sam saw something familiar. A shape, a face that made his stomach drop. It looked like his brother. His brother had died 20 years ago, buried in a collapse at the very same mine below this hollow. The thing crawled toward him on its stomach, bones cracking with every movement. "Sam," it croaked. "You left us there." Sam stumbled backward, shaking his head. "No, that's not real. You're not real." But the voice came again, louder this time, layered with others, like dozens of whispers overlapping, each one pleading, "Help us, help us." The ground rippled behind it. More cracks formed. Hands, dozens of them, broke through the soil, pale and twitching, clawing upward like worms seeking air. Sam turned and ran. He didn't stop until he reached the truck, screaming for the others to go. But when they returned later with the sheriff and floodlights, there was nothing. No hole, no remains, no signs of struggle. Just the same steaming ground and a strange vibration underfoot. That night, Sam couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard tapping beneath the floorboards of his cabin. Soft, rhythmic, like fingers brushing against wood. He finally rose and pressed his ear to the ground. "Sam," came the whisper again, muffled but clear. "We're still here." The tapping grew louder. The boards began to creak as though something were crawling beneath them. Sam backed away and grabbed his axe. Then came the sound, a muffled thud from under the house, followed by another. He ran outside, circled around to the crawl space, and froze. The dirt under his cabin had been disturbed, mounded up, freshly dug. Something was pushing from underneath. The soil split open, and pale fingers reached through. Sam swung his axe. Once, twice, he kept swinging until the movement stopped. His breath came in sharp gasps, fogging in the cold air. When he finally looked down, there was nothing, just loose dirt. He left that night, never packed a thing. Locals say they found his cabin weeks later, the floorboards ripped up from below. The sheriff who investigated swore he heard something breathing down there, faint but steady. They sealed the property off after that. And to this day, hikers who walk through Black Hollow say they sometimes hear tapping under their boots. Some even claim the ground rises and falls, like a chest inhaling, alive beneath the surface. No one goes near it in October anymore, because the rain makes the soil soft. And when it softens, things start to move again. If you're hearing this, and you've ever hiked the Appalachian trails at night, remember this. If the ground moves beneath your feet, it's not the wind. It's the earth remembering what it buried. Subscribe to Fear Begins if you want to uncover what still stirs beneath Appalachia's forgotten hollows. But remember, once you start listening, the mountains start listening back. They say there's a woman who walks the ridge when the fog rolls in, and if you see her face before dawn, you'll never find your way back out. Harker Ridge wasn't much more than a ghost of a trail, a thin, uneven path winding through the Appalachian highlands of western North Carolina. The locals said it had once been part of an old moonshine route, back when bootleggers ran whiskey through the woods, but the place had been abandoned for decades. The earth swallowed the road, the trees grew thick around it, and the mist never seemed to leave. That's where Caleb Merrin disappeared. He was a wildlife photographer, 29, quiet, a bit too curious for his own good. He'd been documenting Appalachia's fog formations that October, trying to capture what he called the living breath of the mountains. His friends told him not to go past Harker Ridge. They said something about the mist there wasn't right. It moved wrong, thicker and colder than it should have been. Caleb just laughed, said he'd seen worse storms in the Smokies. He left at dawn. He never came home. The sheriff's report said they found his car parked off an old service road, keys still in the ignition. His camera was gone, his tripod missing. But the oddest thing, his phone had a single video, only 34 seconds long. It started with heavy breathing and the sound of boots crunching leaves. The fog was so thick you could barely see. Then faintly, a woman's voice echoed through the trees. "Caleb," he whispered back. "Who's there?" There was a pause, then the mist shifted, like someone exhaling, and in the corner of the frame, something moved, not a person, not exactly. Just a faint shape in white, gliding between the trees. Caleb called out again. No response then. In the faintest whisper, "Help me!" The camera trembled. He turned toward the sound, and the shape came into focus for half a second. The silhouette of a woman, her head tilted, long hair plastered against her face. Then, abruptly, the video cut out. That was all. When the search team went in after him, they found his footprints leading up the ridge, then stopping halfway. The ground beyond was untouched. No tracks leading back down. The dogs refused to go any farther. One deputy said he'd seen something up there, a shimmer in the mist. He said it looked like the outline of a woman, standing just beyond the tree line, watching. When they tried to approach, the fog swallowed her whole. They called off the search 3 days later. But here's the part no one talks about. 2 weeks after the search ended, hikers started reporting strange encounters near Harker Ridge. They said they heard a woman calling their names even when they were alone. Some claimed they saw her reflection in puddles or foggy lenses. Even when there was no one around, one man, a retired forest ranger named Doyle, swore he met her face to face. He was hiking at dusk when he saw a figure kneeling by the creek, her back turned. She was humming softly, a tune so sad it made him stop. "Ma'am, you all right?" he called out. She turned around slowly. Her face was pale, eyes hollow, lips blue. But what froze Doyle in place wasn't her expression. It was her eyes. They were clouded over like cataracts, but they glowed faintly white from within. She smiled, a small broken smile, and whispered, "I've been waiting for him." Then the mist thickened, swirling around her like smoke. And when it cleared, she was gone. Doyle ran. He told people the air in that hollow felt wrong, heavy, like breathing underwater. He said the fog moved against the wind, curling toward him like it was alive. A few nights later, he woke up in his cabin to the sound of soft humming, the same tune he'd heard by the creek. It was coming from outside. He looked through the window. The fog had rolled down from the ridge, pooling around his house like a living thing, and in the center of it stood the woman, still humming, still waiting. He swore she was smiling at him through the glass. By morning, he packed and left for good. Locals have their theories. Some say she was a bootlegger's wife who vanished in the 1930s, searching for her husband in a storm that swallowed her whole. Others say she's not human at all, that the mist itself took form after too many souls were lost in it. And now it hunts the living by wearing their loved ones' voices, whatever she is. Hikers who dare climb Harker Ridge say the air grows colder near the summit. They hear whispers in the fog, names they never gave anyone, and if they turn around too fast, they swear they see her standing there, hands outstretched, mouth slightly open, as if she's about to speak, but she never does. She just watches and waits, because the moment you acknowledge her, the moment you answer her call, you're hers. So if you ever find yourself lost in the Appalachian mist and you hear a woman calling your name, don't look back, don't speak, and whatever you do, don't follow her voice. The mountains already have enough ghosts. If you made it this far, you're already deep in the Appalachian dark. Subscribe to Fear Begins if you want to keep descending. But remember, once you start listening, they say deep in the Appalachian woods, there's a cabin that stands with no door. No one builds it, no one tears it down, it just appears when the mist is thick enough to hide it, and if you ever step inside, the forest won't let you back out. The first person to talk about it was Elijah Crow, a hunter from eastern Kentucky. Folks knew him as level-headed, not the type to scare easy. He'd hunted black bears in the Smokies, slept through snowstorms, and once survived a lightning strike that set his rifle on fire. So when he came down from the ridge one October, looking pale as chalk, shaking like a leaf, people listened. He said he was tracking a wounded deer just before dawn when the fog rolled in heavy, the kind that turns the world grey and silent. The air went cold, his breath turned white, and the forest suddenly stopped breathing. No birds, no wind, just silence. Then he saw it. A cabin standing in a hollow that wasn't supposed to be there. He swore up and down he'd hunted that ridge 100 times and had never seen any structure. It was small, made of dark logs, and half covered in ivy. Smoke rose from a chimney, and a faint light flickered from within, thinking someone might be living off-grid. Elijah approached. That's when he noticed something odd. The cabin had no door, no hinges, no frame, nothing. Just 4 walls and a single narrow window glowing from inside. He circled it twice. No sign of an entrance. But when he peered through the window, he saw movement. A figure sitting in a rocking chair near a fire. He couldn't make out the face. Only a silhouette. The figure stopped rocking. and turned toward him. Elijah jumped back. The light inside flickered, and for a moment, he swore he saw his own reflection in the window, but twisted, his face pale, his eyes hollow, his mouth hanging open in a silent scream. Then the window went dark. He backed away slowly, muttering to himself that it had to be a trick of the fog. But when he turned around, the forest was different. The trees didn't look the same. His trail was gone. The compass needle spun in circles. That's when the whisper started, soft at first. Words that sounded like his name carried on the wind. He shouted into the mist, but his voice just disappeared, like the air swallowed it. And then behind him, he heard the creak of a rocking chair. He turned back. The cabin's window was glowing again, only this time the fire inside had gone out. The light wasn't orange anymore. It was white, cold, flickering, and the figure was standing now, right by the window, watching him. Elijah fired his rifle. The glass shattered. The light blinked out. But there was no sound of the bullet hitting anything. Just silence. He reloaded, his hands shaking, and when he looked again, the cabin was gone. He found himself standing in the middle of a clearing with no sign of structure. No smoke, no footprints, just his spent shell casings in the mud. He hiked back down to town before nightfall, muttering the same words over and over. No door, no way out. A few weeks later, his friend Tommy went up the ridge to prove Elijah wrong. He brought a camera, a compass, and his brother for backup. They made it halfway up before the fog thickened, thick enough that Tommy said it felt like walking through water. Then they saw it, the same cabin right where Elijah said it'd be. Only now the window wasn't glowing, it was open. Tommy's brother told him not to go near it. But Tommy was stubborn. He took out his phone, started recording, and approached. The video they found later, because Tommy didn't come back, lasted just over 2 minutes. It shows the cabin standing perfectly still, the fog swirling around it like a living thing. Then Tommy says, "There's no door, man, this is wait." He stops. The camera shakes. He steps closer. There's a faint hum, like wind blowing through a bottle. The closer he gets, the louder it gets. Then out of nowhere, the camera cuts out. His brother said he turned around for 1 second, just one, to look for the trail back. And when he turned around again, Tommy was gone. The cabin too. The search party found the phone sitting in the mud. The compass needle wouldn't stop spinning. People still go up there sometimes. Kids trying to scare themselves, YouTubers chasing clicks. Some come back claiming they saw the cabin, that it's real. They say it looks newer every time, like someone's rebuilding it after each storm. And when they look through the window, they see something different each time. Some see a fire, some see an empty room, and one man swore he saw himself sitting inside, staring back. They say if you see the cabin in the mist, you're being warned that the mountains are testing you, seeing if you'll step closer, because once you touch those walls, the forest takes your path away. You'll walk for hours and end up right where you started, in front of that cabin, no matter which direction you run. And when night falls, the window opens, and you'll see yourself inside, already waiting. If you ever hike the Appalachian Ridge and find a clearing you don't remember, listen carefully. If the wind stops and the air grows thick, and you see something in the mist that looks like a cabin with no door, turn around, keep walking, and never look back. 'Cause if you look again, you'll see your reflection waving you inside. They say there's a valley in the Appalachian range where you can hear screams every October. Not the kind of screams from coyotes or mountain lions. These sound human, and worse, they sound familiar. Locals call it the Screaming Valley, though maps never name it that. They'll tell you it's a myth, a campfire tale. But everyone who's lived near it long enough knows the truth. The screams are real, and they always come from people who shouldn't exist anymore. The first time Hannah Moore heard them, she thought someone was dying. She'd been driving the old road past Beach Fork, a narrow dirt trail that runs alongside the hollow, when her headlights caught something moving in the fog. It looked like a person standing in the middle of the road, soaked to the bone, head tilted back like they were screaming. Only no sound came out. Then a second later it did. A shrill, guttural cry pierced the air, high and broken like glass shattering in her ears. Hannah slammed on the brakes, but when she looked again, the road was empty. The fog hung heavy and still. She drove the rest of the way home trembling, her hands locked on the steering wheel. But later that night, when the wind shifted through her valley, she heard it again, the same scream echoing across the hills, and that was only the beginning. Over the next few days, the screams grew louder. They came every night, sometimes right before sunset, sometimes at 2 in the morning. They always sounded like someone begging for help. Hannah called the sheriff, but by the time he arrived, everything was quiet. No one believed her. Then her dog disappeared. She found the leash snapped clean in two, leading down toward the hollow. That's when she decided she'd had enough. She grabbed her flashlight and her rifle and followed the trail herself. The mist was thicker than ever, swirling at her knees, tasting like iron in the air. The deeper she went, the quieter the forest became. She could hear her own heartbeat. Her breath fogged up in front of her. Then she heard it, a scream so close it made her knees buckle. It was her own voice. It wasn't possible. She hadn't said a word, but the echo that rolled through the valley was hers. Every tone, every pitch. It came again, louder this time. And she realized it wasn't coming from one place. It was coming from everywhere. She dropped the flashlight. It rolled into the mist, spinning light over something dark and twisted just a few feet ahead. She thought it was a log at first, until she saw the fingers. It was a hand, sticking out of the ground like it had been reaching for air. Then another and another, dozens of them, pale and thin, jutting out of the soil as if clawing their way up. Her flashlight flickered out. The screams turned to whispers, and she ran when she made it back home. Her clothes were torn, her skin scratched raw. She couldn't explain what she'd seen. But the next morning, when the sheriff came to check, the ground in the hollow was smooth. No sign of disturbance, except one thing: a paw print, her dog's, pressed deep into the mud, leading straight toward the valley and stopping halfway. Next to it, her own footprint, fresh, even though she hadn't gone back that same week. 2 hikers went missing in the area. Search and rescue teams combed the valley for days, but found nothing but shredded fabric tangled in the brambles and claw marks carved into the trees. 5 deep grooves, as if something with hands had climbed out of the dirt. Locals started locking their doors at night. Hunters refused to go near the ridge, but the screams kept coming. One night, a group of teenagers decided to prove it was all fake. They brought recording equipment, set up camp near the hollow, and live-streamed the whole thing. The footage lasted exactly 17 minutes. It starts normal, laughter, teasing, the sound of a fire crackling. Then one of them says, "Do you guys hear that?" The camera pans across the fog, catching movement. A shadow crawling on all fours just beyond the tree line. Then the first scream hits. It's faint, distant. Then another joins it. Then a third. Within seconds, the valley erupts into a chorus of wailing voices. But the worst part isn't the screams, it's what they're saying. If you listen closely, you can hear your name. When police recovered the phone the next morning, the screen was cracked, and the recording ended with a flash of light. Then silence. No one from that group was ever found. Locals say the Screaming Valley is cursed ground, a sinkhole between the living and the lost. Some believe it's where the echoes of the missing go to beg for release. Others think it's something older, something that feeds on sound, mimicking the voices of the people it takes. Whatever it is, the pattern never changes. Every October, the mist rolls in thicker. Every October, someone new hears their name echoing through the fog. And if you hear it, If you ever hear your own voice screaming in the woods, don't answer. Don't look for where it's coming from, because the second you do, the valley finds you, and it will not let you go. They say in the deepest parts of the Appalachian range, there's a light that never goes out. A dim, orange glow that drifts between the trees like a lantern being carried by something that no longer needs to see where it's going. Locals call it the lantern in the hollow. And if you ever see it, don't follow, because those who do are never seen again. The first story goes back to 1912. When the miners in Blue Ash Hollow started vanishing one by one. Some said it was gas pockets, others said the tunnels had caved in. But the bodies were never found, and every man who went looking for them swore they saw the same thing. A faint lantern light swaying deep inside the mines. Back then, miners carried lanterns fueled by oil, and when one went out it was a bad omen. So when Elias Greer, the foreman, saw that light still burning 2 weeks after the last crew disappeared, he thought it was a miracle. He took 3 men and went down to retrieve it. Only Elias came back. He was found at dawn, staggering through the fog, eyes wide and unfocused. His hair had turned pure white. He wouldn't speak for days. When he finally did, all he said was, "It's still walking down there." The mine was sealed that same week. But the light never stopped. Over the years, hunters, hikers, and drifters all claimed to see it moving between the trees. Always in October, always around midnight. Some said it looked like an oil lantern. Others swore it flickered like fire inside a jar, but they all said the same thing. It moved with purpose, like someone was carrying it. A few brave ones followed it, none returned. Then, in 2007, a woman named Lydia Grant moved into an old cabin near the base of the hollow. She'd lost her husband in a car accident that spring and wanted to get away from everything. No phones, no neighbors, just her and the woods. The first night was peaceful. The second, she woke up to a faint glow outside her window. At first she thought it was lightning bugs, but the light was steady, golden, floating just above the ground. She went out to look. The forest was dead silent. No wind, no crickets, nothing. She called out. No answer. Then the light drifted closer. Slowly it began to rise, swaying from side to side like someone was walking toward her. She could make out a faint outline now. A dark figure behind the glow, shoulders hunched, head low. But there was no sound of footsteps. The figure stopped at the edge of her yard. The light bobbed once as if greeting her, then it vanished. The next morning she found footprints in the mud, bare feet leading up to her porch and stopping right beneath her bedroom window. That night she nailed the shutters shut, but the light came back again. This time it circled the house. The boards on the windows creaked. Something tapped against the glass, and from outside she heard it. A man's voice. "It's cold out here." It sounded like her husband. She froze. He'd been dead for 6 months. His body had been cremated. She whispered his name, and the lantern flared. The glow turned red, burning like a coal. Then it began to move faster, whipping around the house until the air smelled like burning oil. When it stopped, she heard the front door handle turn. She screamed and fired her shotgun through the door. The light blinked out instantly. The police found nothing the next morning. No footprints, no signs of forced entry. Just a faint ring of black soot around the threshold, shaped like a handprint. A week later, Lydia vanished. Her cabin was found empty, her lantern on the table still burning with fresh oil. Even though she had not refilled it in weeks, the flame has never gone out. Today, hikers still talk about seeing the lantern in the hollow. Some say it tries to lure you by taking the form of someone you love, walking just far enough ahead that you think you can catch up. Others say it leads the lost deeper into the forest where the air grows colder and the light flickers just long enough for you to see the faces waiting in the dark. There's one video online, shaky, low resolution, posted by a group of ghost hunters in 2018. They're laughing, mocking the story, saying they'll find the truth. The camera catches something glowing between the trees, a soft orange orb swaying back and forth. Then one of them whispers, "Wait, do you see someone holding it?" The light stops. Then it turns toward the camera. You can hear one of them gasp, and the video cuts to static. Police found the group's van still running by the side of the road. No sign of the people, no lantern, but deep in the woods, rangers found scorch marks shaped like footprints, leading nowhere. If you ever hike near Blue Ash Hollow and see a light in the distance, do not call out, do not follow, because it is not looking for help. It is looking for company, and if you make eye contact with that glow, you will never find your way out again if you made it this far. Subscribe to Fear Begins for more true Appalachian horror stories that will chill you through October's mist. Tell us in the comments, have you ever seen a strange light in the woods? One that followed you when you turned away? They say the forest keeps what it's owed, and in the darkest valleys of the Appalachian mountains, something ancient is still collecting its debt. Locals whisper about the hollow children, pale figures that appear in the fog, barefoot, silent, watching from the tree line. If you see them once, you are lucky. If you see them twice, you do not go home. The story begins in Cedar Vale, West Virginia, a mining town that vanished from every map in the 1960s. No one remembers when it was founded. No one remembers when it fell. But old-timers in the nearby counties still tell the same tale of a classroom, a flood, and a promise never kept. In 1953, a small school sat at the bottom of the valley, a one-room building where a teacher named Miss Elaine Foster taught 23 children. They were poor, but they were happy every morning. The kids walked from the hills with packed lunches and mud on their shoes, and every evening they ran home before the fog rolled in. Then the rains came. A dam upstream, a crude, wooden barrier built decades earlier, began to crack under the pressure. Elaine reported it to the town council, but they brushed her off. "It's been standing since my granddad's time," the mayor said. A little rain never hurt it. 3 nights later, the dam broke. It was around midnight when the roar began, a sound like a train screaming through the forest. The river rose 15 feet in minutes. The valley was swallowed whole. When the flood receded by dawn, the schoolhouse was gone. The children, all 23, were never found. For weeks, the town searched. They dredged the river, tore through the mud, and even sent divers down into the hollow. But there were no bodies, just toys, a few notebooks, and the teacher's broken glasses, found wedged in a tree. After that, Cedar Vale changed. People stopped going into the woods. Livestock disappeared. At night, parents locked their doors and whispered prayers. Then the sightings began. A farmer claimed he saw footprints in the mud behind his barn. Small, barefoot, perfectly formed, leading straight into the forest and vanishing at the edge of the trees. A hunter said he woke up in his camp to the sound of children laughing, soft and distant, followed by something dripping onto his tent. When he unzipped it, he found muddy handprints smeared across the canvas. And then came Thomas Beck, a trucker who broke down near Cedar Vale in 1982. He said he was walking along the road when the fog rolled in so thick he could not see his own headlights. That was when he saw them, tiny figures in the mist, moving together in a line. At first he thought they were real children. They looked human, but their skin was grayish, their eyes pale like glass marbles. They stood in a row by the tree line watching him. He called out to ask if they were okay. None of them answered. Then one tilted its head, Its mouth stretched wide, too wide, and a sound came out. Not a scream, a bubbling, gurgling noise, like someone drowning while trying to laugh. Thomas ran. He never went back. Years later, locals started finding old relics, school supplies, pieces of desks, a locket with the initials EF engraved on it. Every October more would appear. It was like the forest was spitting them out. By the 2000s, hikers started posting about the hollow children online. They described eerily similar experiences: glowing eyes low to the ground, faint giggles that echoed for miles, and the smell of river water, fresh, metallic, and wrong. One woman uploaded an audio recording from her phone, claiming she captured their voices. You can barely make it out over the wind, but if you listen closely, you hear something small whispering. The teacher said, "Wait." Her video ends when she starts crying and says, "Please stop touching me." The account was deleted the next day. In 2019, a paranormal investigator named Cara Linwood took a team into the hollow. She had researched the flood for years and believed the spirits were trapped, children who never moved on. Her goal was to communicate with them, to free them. The footage recovered from her team's cameras was never officially released, but fragments leaked onto dark web forums. In one clip, Cara walks through the fog, holding a recorder. She's whispering, "We are not here to hurt you. We just want to help," a small voice responds. "You're late." Then the camera pans, and there they are. 23 small figures standing in a semicircle. Their clothes are tattered, covered in mud. Some have holes in their chests. Some are missing parts of their faces. All of them are smiling. Cara gasps and says, "Oh my God." And the tape cuts out. Her team never came back. Their van was found 2 miles away. Doors open, headlights still on. The police report mentioned something strange. Tiny, muddy handprints covering every inch of the vehicle's interior. Today, the Cedar Vale Valley is overgrown. Unreachable by car, locals say the ground still feels soft there, like it never fully dried after the flood. And every October, when the rains come again, the fog rolls thick over the hollow. If you stand on the ridge and listen closely, you can hear it. The faint echo of a school bell ringing once, then laughter. Some hikers claim they have seen them. The children standing in the fog, holding hands. Others say they hear a woman's voice calling from the woods. "Come back inside. Class, it's time to go home." But no one ever finds the source. It is said the hollow children do not mean harm. They are still waiting for their teacher, still waiting for someone to lead them home. But if you follow their laughter into the mist, you will never find your way back, because the forest remembers the flood, and it does not like to be disturbed. So if you ever find yourself driving through the Appalachian back roads and the fog begins to thicken, if you hear children laughing where there should be none, do not stop, do not look, and whatever you do not answer when a small voice asks, "Will you walk us home?" Thank you for watching Fear Begins. If this story chilled your bones, make sure you subscribe for more true Appalachian horror encounters every week, and tell us in the comments, what would you do if you heard children laughing in the fog miles from any